Is it recording now?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Terry, you might have to be president. 2020.
No, they're
Regular meetings. Okay. And they didn't say underneath there, we're gonna have a special meeting. Technical.
Did you take your speaker part of that, John?
I'm not gonna speak.
Oh, did you?
Tape.
Yeah, the second you do that, you'll want to move it.
What's your city water getting now? How much water?
So good now.
Too what?
Good now.
Very.
I think it varies, but that, it's still right around 300-some-thousand dollars.
Should somebody go knock on, is Eric in there too?
He is.
So I'm entitled to that thing of 4,500, so
I know.
we only have 4,500 on that water.
Is it board business?
We could if we wanted to.
Should have made a contract.
Oh, she's here.
We moved the chair, so. Call them out when it comes. Since we're doing public, let's just call them out and
Call to order, regular meeting of the Board of Directors for Northeast Water District, Thursday, February 28th at 5:03. Roll call, please.
President Hansard,
Here?
Vice President Brown,
Here.
Director Nielsen,
here.
Director Hawthorne,
Here.
Director Flora,
Here.
General Manager Maupin.
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance. Stand, please.
Where, oh.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
Ours. I have my own.
Okay, item C, public input. Opportunity for public comment on any non-agendized item within the jurisdiction of the district board. However, no action may be taken by the board on topics or matters presented during this public input. The public must address the board on specific agendized items only during the board's consideration of that item. Okay, first one we have is Jenny Cavalieri.
This is actually to address Director Nielsen. I understand that you have a blog now that no one can respond to, so
Yeah.
it's not as dynamic as one would hope. Several months ago, I gave the board a copy of the revenues from South Feather, and unfortunately, it was misconstrued. There's two things that need to be looked at. There's the revenues and there's the income. What I gave you was revenues, that's all the money. Income is actually what goes in the bank. The South Feather Water operating fund takes the revenues and uses what we get and they get to operate the system. If your general manager was giving you your quarterly reports that you should be getting from South Feather, you would see the actual expenses for the project. So I would highly recommend that you ask for that and get it. You would better then understand what I gave you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next is Lou Neal.
Last Tuesday, at the South Feather board meeting, I attended with a few others, and I asked their board president whether the public could legally speak per the Brown Act to ask questions and receive answers from the board. President Hickman said, yes. I stated that we were not permitted to question-answer process. The directors asked who the district was that I was referring to. I said North Yuba. I heard somebody say, I thought so. Jeff Maupin was present in the room and made no response. South Feather directors expressed the importance and necessity of communication between the public and the board. With that rendition in mind, and Brown Act 54954.2 of the Brown Act, I asked President Hansard, did you receive the final Forbes-Town Ditch Emergency Engineering Plan before they were handed over to the Water Agency for their approval, yes or no? Director Hawthorne, same question, yes or no?
This is comment.
Director Brown,
It's comments, not questions. You can.
it's a
this is-
question, and
Right.
it is permitted by the Brown Act.
No, this is public comments right now. So you're welcome to comment. We don't need to respond if we don't feel like we have to.
Director Brown? Director Nielsen?
I'm not
Director
gonna
Floor?
respond per se, but what exactly is it you're talking about?
Did you see the Forbes-Town Ditch Engineering plans before they were handed over to the Water Agency?
No.
Director Floor? And I will assume that those who responded or gave no response means no review has occurred. And it is clear to the public who have not reviewed these plans that this board is derelict in their legal and fiduciary duties in surrendering their responsibilities to this district. Thank you.
Anyone else before we move on?
I'd like to say something. Do I have to look over that thing? I can't really see it.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, I don't know what's been going on because I had to be out of town for the last two meetings, and I have kind of lost track of things, but it occurred to me that we might possibly work something out with the state of California about the Forbes-Town ditch. I don't know why we have to pipe the whole thing. I think maybe if the Forbes-Town ditch was piped in places where there could be breaches, and also piped in places where it's easy to pipe it in order to prevent a certain amount of evaporation of the water. But I think we should make it easier on ourselves and keep the price of water down. I mean, we're fortunate here. We have water. We have plenty of water. I've been here for 13 years, and never once has there been a water shortage, only from time to time asking us to use less water temporarily while they repaired a breach in the ditch or whatever because of the weather. But, I mean, I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any more?
I didn't fill out one of those requests. May I speak?
Go ahead.
My name is Lauren Olson. I spent 17 and a half years on this board up until 2016. Anyway, I haven't been able to make contact with the district for quite some time, and I was wondering if we could get a brief outline on where we stand on the Forbes-Town Ditch project. Thank you. I assume that would come under the manager's report if possible.
Any more? Hearing none?
I got a comment, please, sir. Try to be very short call the meeting. Thank you for letting me speak in. Even though I didn't fill out a request form. My name is Kwanzaa Vinji. I thought about maybe what I would say at this meeting. There's a lot of chatter that goes on throughout the room within the community and the board. As I stated before, my family, along with my constituents on the Vinci line, remain independent. So no matter what is being said or what is happening on the outside or the inside, it's kind of been disheartening to the people that are just the small people that don't care about that. If there's water, we would like to have our irrigation, please, no matter if it doesn't last this season. I want to say a little bit more, but a lot of what I heard the board talking before we started, along with the gentleman's conversation I had during the last meeting, and with the gentleman just tonight before we came in, I hear a lot about grandkids, grandchildren. Water is life. That's our future. I'm a pond. My grandfather, my grandmother were in this community for over 40 plus years. The best way to know our future and where we're going is knowing our history. This person may not be every person's cup of tea in the community, but I say to the board, the knowledge, the history is Miss Cavalier right here. And no matter what's taken place, I think away from personal or politics stuff, you could use her as a resource, because that knowledge benefits my siblings, their children that are gonna come, and one day, that'll make more votes. I could run on probably on my family's name right now and almost win this district. But I've served my country, I've represented my state, and I've been in my local community. Think about the future. And a lot of the history is within Jenny Cavalier. So no matter what it is, make amends and let's move forward, please, because the chatter, the stuff in the paper, that's fine. They used to have the bull and the heifer of the woods next door. If you had a personal problem, you could go up there. My mother and my aunt did it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kwanzaa.
Any more? Hearing none. Move on to action item D. Consent items. Number one, approval of the minutes for the special board meeting of January 31st, 2019. Number two, approval of payroll for the month of January 2019 in the amount of $46,689.95. And three, approval of the bills for the month of January 2019 in the amount of $69,210.28.
President Hanson, I have some questions, please. I have questions on each of these three items, so I don't know if you want to take each one separately or how you want to do it.
So, your questions might need to have some
Right.
input from our financial manager as well. I don't know if they're gonna have all that information.
Okay.
on hand.
Well, I can put the questions out. We could see if there's an answer or there's not an answer. Okay, thank you. First of all, I wanted to say in advance that the minutes are inaccurate. And they don't reflect the meeting and they don't reflect the discussions. One of the things that I see throughout the minutes is just this blanket statement of the public made comments. There is no record of what those comments are or those concerns are, and this is supposed to be a public record. There is also inaccuracy where it said that I approved the meeting minutes for November. It's reported as unanimous. That is not true. I voted nay on approving the meeting minutes for November. So the meeting minutes are not correct. There is also no mention of my request for an ad hoc committee and the response to my request. That's not in the meeting minutes. So those are my concerns regarding the minutes, and there are corrections that need to be made to those meeting minutes. Relative to payroll, I have a question as to why the employees' names are not showing up on payroll. This is part of the Public Records Act, and the public employees do not have a reasonable expectation of privacy with their names, salary information, or dates of employment. And so I'd like to see the names on the payroll. They are missing from the payroll. And I actually have a number of case law that I can provide if that's something that you need.
If I may respond to that, the first two initials in the left-hand column before each of the things on the payroll signify who the customer or the employee is.
The initials only work if people have unique initials. And in this case, for example, for board directors, we have two HAs. We have Hansard and we have Hawthorne. So it makes it's just part of the public record. In other words, the public is actually entitled to copies of payroll, and members of the public are not necessarily going to know who the employees actually are. So what they need to know is a name, what is their actual job, and what is that pay, because that is part of the public record. So that's my point there. And then I have a few questions on the bills. One question I have is regarding check number 22579 in the amount of $1,607. And that was a check to Smart Marketing for public outreach in January. And I'm curious because we didn't have a meeting in December, and we didn't have a meeting until January 31st. So I'm wondering, in addition, there is no contract with Smart Marketing that I'm aware of. I'm aware of 6 contracts, none of them are with a marketing firm. So I'm wondering why we wrote a check for $1,600 to Smart Marketing, and what was that public outreach?
So that would be, and I'm gonna ask Jeff to jump in on this. This is part of the,
I'm happy to
the
go
money.
back through her bill, but I'll need to go back through her bill.
Okay.
Okay, so then the second question is about the diesel fuel bill, which is $1,517.63. And I've noticed that there's a diesel thing in Mr. Mopin's truck. And I'm wondering, is this the bill to fill that, or is this the bill to fill the actual machines?
Should be,
Fills my truck, employees' trucks, 2 tractors.
And is there a log of how much fuel is being tracked and where it's going? Okay, and where would that log be kept? Is
Well,
that?
the current one is kept out by the pump to be logged in every time someone gas.
Okay, and that's also filling the big thing that's in the back of your pickup truck?
There's no big thing in the back of my
Okay.
pickup truck.
And then there's also check number 22544, which is copy or maintenance agreement. And I was wondering if that is for the office printer there in the office, and is that just a monthly fee? Do you get charged for it per page? How does that work? Is that what we see every month for the copier bills?
I'll need to go back and look at that bill.
Okay, I appreciate that very much. That's it.
What is the code, if I may ask, for Eric and for Gary?
What do you mean, what's the
The-
code?
Well,
Payroll?
what initials do you use for that? I'm just, because I've never had an issue on this. And Eric? Unfortunately, this doesn't have our payroll on it, we'd be able to think and say.
Right, yeah, because it's January, so
Yeah.
it won't show for January. Yeah.
It's in the board package for February.
And I might actually add that I wasn't here on November, and so if it says, whatever the term, unanimous, yeah,
right,
so.
okay. Some of the questions you brought up, I would have to refer to legal as far as, I can't really give an answer on for the minutes. The questions you had on, is it the legality of having the people's names mentioned?
Yeah, there's not a requirement per se, but if a member of the public requests that this go into the public record, since it's a public agency, for example, Ms. Corson last time read 4 different letters and requested those be incorporated into the minutes. And I do think that that is part of what we have to do as a public agency, is accurately reflect the concerns of the public. You know, this is one of the things that we're working on as a district, is to improve our image, right? And to play into that, to honor, if you will, the public, which is who we represent. When the public asks that something be entered into the minutes, I think it's very important to do that. And it's also important for us to remark on their concerns. They're important concerns, so we do need to have those in the minutes. Otherwise, the minutes aren't accurate. And to simply say, which is what's in here multiple times, is, you know, the public, basically the public said something, but it doesn't say what the public said. Members of the public addressed the board. That doesn't tell us what they talked about. And so that's something that's really quite important, that we need to be putting that in there. Especially since we want to work on our image.
Barbara,
you know,
what do you
for the
think about
public.
that?
Generally, the minutes are supposed to be a summary reflection of the meeting. That's
Not in detail.
no, it's a summary. Minutes are a summary of what occurred at the meeting. And I want to just back up. And so, are you asking for the minutes to be pulled from the consent calendar?
I'm saying that the minutes are not accurate. The minutes need to be corrected before they can be approved of. There are a number of inaccuracies that are being reported right now, and Doug just mentioned another one. And so, prior to being willing to approve of these minutes, they need to be accurate. This is part of the public record.
Right. I understand your comment on the minutes. So, in order to do that procedurally, you should request that the meeting minutes be pulled from the consent calendar.
All
And
right.
now you've had a discussion on those minutes, and now that those meeting minutes need to be subject to a separate discussion and then determination on, corrections. What's the board want to do? Correct the minutes according to the Director Floor's comments, and then you bring the minutes back to the next meeting, the corrected minutes to the next meeting. So that needs to be made by motion
So that,
Okay.
outside, and so you pull it from the consent calendar.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like, you've gotten, and you want additional information that needs to take some investigation on the finances. So it sounds like you want to pull those from the consent calendar as well. And then you take them up separately.
Yes, that's right.
Or did you just want to be answered those questions?
As far as the bills go, I would just like answers to the questions. So if those answers could be forthcoming at some point, Heidi, I know you have things going on, but if you could pull those data for me, that would be great. The minutes, I would like to make a motion to pull the minutes so that they can be corrected, and we can revisit those at the next meeting.
okay, so, go ahead.
Yes, are you confused?
Well, yeah, because my understanding of the minutes, it's supposed to reflect the actions of the board. And if comments didn't cause any action of the board to either be placed on a future agenda or to be in some kind of consideration, that they're non-reportable.
Well, the minutes are supposed to be, like I said, a summary of the meeting itself, not just necessarily actions by the board.
Okay.
They should include discussion by the board, those kind of things. And they should have some indication of the general public comments.
Okay.
Not saying that every person that commented, that you have to take their name and detail, but just some generally, public comments included, comments on X, Y, Z.
So the idea of letters being read into the minutes, is that that to be summarized or to be,
Summarize, everything is summary.
okay?
It's all summary fashion. That you can, the public can submit those letters and hand them to you, and the letters themselves can become part of the public record.
Which I believe is what the member of the public was asking for. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can make them a part of the meeting minutes.
You say you can or you will,
If that's the way you wanna summarize those letters, that, you can do it that way, or you can summarize them.
Or it makes less human resource use to just take the letters, make a copy and stick it in the minutes as a part
You
of the
reference
PDF.
them.
Yeah.
You reference them in the minutes, that these comment letters were provided to the board.
Yeah.
But we can just summarize
Yes,
tersely if we,
if you choose, right,
okay, so there's a whole broad spectrum
yeah.
of our approach to this.
So, but I think what you first need to do is, you made a request to pull these two, at least the one item from the,
Which would be item 1, correct? So
You're right.
Correct.
you're okay with 2 and 3.
Let's say-
We're gonna see 1.
right, I think what you should circle back and deal with one as a separate item, so the record's clear what you're doing.
So if you make a motion to pull item 1.
I did, yes. Okay.
Well, you just simply request it, it doesn't have to be a motion.
Okay.
It's just a
Okay.
request to be pulled from the consent calendar for discussion. So you've done that, you've
I
had
did
that
that.
discussion, and so now the next move, because that's the item that you're on right now, is to make a motion to correct the minutes pursuant to,
Okay, so I make a motion that we correct the minutes,
per your discussion,
per our discussion.
Okay.
and bring them back to the next meeting.
I still haven't heard a definitive. I've heard you suggest that we put the letters from the
I need
public.
a second to, do the second and then we vote?
I think
I'm
summarize.
still trying to get
There's still
consensus
discussion.
on what I'm supposed to do.
Okay.
So the suggestion has been that letters from the public be items
Summarized with it.
summarized or
With all the
actually
others.
added. And so you guys have to clear up for me how you want your board minutes to look going forward.
I think, my own personal opinion is they weren't very long letters, they were basically a paragraph. It doesn't seem like would be that difficult to just stick them in there. And it's less trouble than trying to actually paraphrase the paragraphs. If it was 2 or 3 pages, then I would say, yeah, let's just summarize, but they were literally like paragraphs. And she did hand over the copies, so it'd be easy.
can we do it
easy.
one way one time and another way
That's
the
what I was
next
just gonna
time?
ask.
Your discussion.
Well, I was looking behind you.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
If there's a bunch, then you have to summarize. I would think you would.
you do it on a case-by-case basis, you don't have to you make a determination for what you wanna do with this set of minutes, and when it comes up again, you can address it then.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so I make a motion that we revise these, pull them now, revise them, add in these few little pieces and bring it back to the table next go around.
I guess where I'm at with is, you have to have this, you need a majority to do this, correct? Or is this,
The minutes should be correct and accurate.
right? How do
Whether
we-
you add the letters or not is up to you.
Okay,
Okay, I'll second it.
okay. We vote, correct? Is that?
Well, you open it up for, is there any more board discussion?
I don't know. Anybody?
Then open it up to
I
the
think
public.
the only reason that we had behaved differently or had a different strategy in mind was over the years, we've had a lot of letters to be added to the minutes. And we've had a lot of detail that we felt was, in the long run, didn't really contribute to the board outcome, the activity that the board was So that's a sort of the bent that we had at the time, was that it solved a problem that was a problem for the board.
Well, certainly if you have letters that are repetitive, make the same comments over and over and over, there'd be no reason to include every one of those letters, for instance.
Right, and we had letters that were written by somebody, but they were signed by multiple people, things of that nature. So, I'm not saying that there's not exceptions to this strategy, but it was a tremendous waste of time in boards that have sat here in the past over the years. So we would have board meetings that lasted an hour and a half or 2 or 3 hours because of this type of behavior. So anyway, that's why it's sitting, that's why we sit the way we have in the last 2 years.
Any more? Anybody else? Any more discussion? Public?
I've sat on this board for 23 years, and actually letters started showing up probably in the last 6-7 years because people are discontented with what's going on. And we as a board, you as a board, need to listen to what people are saying. That's why you're up there. It is your job, it is your responsibility to get the pulse of the community. And when people are saying something, they're saying it because they're upset and they're not getting their director or board or manager or whatever to react to what the problems are. And it needs to be a record because it's the pulse of the people that are paying for this district, bottom line.
And my comment would be that if you only have a positive.
Can I get you to
Sure.
come up and we'll do it up here?
I'm Donna Corson, I live in Dobbins. Minutes that reflect only positive things and no comments from the community are not accurate. The community needs to be heard, whatever way you vote on it, but their objections or their concerns give a better overall view, and the public has a right to see what the public says, not just what the board says. We want to know what the other members of the public feel too. That's why it's important. It's not just positive minutes. There needs to be the conflict or the discussion 360 degrees.
Come on up.
Would it be asking too much if those in charge were requested to speak up a little louder? I've kind of abused my ears over the years, and I've only heard a small amount of what's taken place. Thank you.
Alton Wright, Forbes-town. I'm awestruck to hear a director be concerned about a meeting lasting an hour, hour and a half, or longer. I'm absolutely awestruck. You guys are here to listen to people, to answer questions, to go through your agenda, to solve problems, to create resolutions, and to streamline anything is really, it's negligent of your role. And as for the letters that are submitted, who are you to take someone's writing and edit it and cherry pick what you believe should be in there? The simplest approach to this would be to take those letters, just put them behind the minutes, you get them, maybe they're discussed, maybe they're not. I'm not really sure why having a lot of letters, Mr. Hawthorne, from the audience is going to take up a lot of time when you approve the minutes. I'm not really sure about the time about that. Thank you. Oh, one last thing. Went to South Feather. You guys each need to go to a South Feather meeting to really see how a meeting is run. Fair, open, transparent, great positive energy. a community and a board that works together to solve problems, not the tension, not the undercurrent that goes on in these meetings. You really need to take the time and attend one of their meetings and really learn how a meeting should be run to really build the image, a positive image for this district. Because just by you saying tonight you're worried about the length of meetings and you're going to take people's letters and edit them, that doesn't sit well with people. It doesn't work for your image. Thank you.
Can I say something? I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill here. I mean, I don't think it takes that much additional time or effort to have correct minutes. I've been on a lot of boards, and we had accurate board, I mean, nobody approved the minutes unless they were accurate, because everybody seemed to be in agreement, but I have never been anything close to this kind of contention in the last some number of years that I've been coming to these meetings. I mean, this has been bordered on the ridiculous, but I don't think it's gonna take that much effort. I mean, do you think it's gonna take that much effort?
No.
Do you really think it's gonna take that much effort to just amend, synopsize where you can and condense where you can, but the mention of people's comments have to be made in the minutes, otherwise, you're right, they're not accurate. It's just the way it is. Thank you.
Yeah. That's really an issue of whether they're summarized or not. If they're not summarized, then they're in great detail.
They don't have to be in the minutes, they don't have to be in great detail. That's just what you said, they have to be mentioned. And necessarily summarized in cases, but they don't have to. They don't have to. It doesn't have to be verbatim.
Okay, I'm done.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry, what did you say?
Thank you, everybody, for your comments. We appreciate them very much.
Anyone else? Hearing none. Now, back to it.
It's a vote.
Vote.
We're voting.
Okay. So, all in favor of removing item 1, consent item, approval of minutes for special board meeting January 31st, 2019, and revising them and bringing them back for the next scheduled board meeting? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. So we're gonna go ahead and pull it and redo it.
Right, with the letters attached. I think the motion included the letters attached. Correct.
Okay.
And so now, the next two items under the consent calendar,
2 and 3.
2 and 3, should be discussed and voted upon for approval. Right, because you're not pulling two.
I'm not asking to pull, I'm just asking for some information, and I think Heidi's going to give me the information.
Right, I believe that was, both items need to be pulled, correct?
No.
No.
No,
she
I mean,
just
not
wanted-
pulled, the information pulled is what I meant.
Right,
Right.
but
The
she's,
information that's not here in front of them, that they'll get.
right,
Is that correct?
Yep.
right.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, item E.
So you still need to
Oh.
take those two last items from the consent calendar and approve them,
Okay,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
okay, so I make, do we have a motion to approve items 2 and 3 for the consent items?
Move we approve items 2 and 3,
I second it.
consent items.
Okay. All in favor of approving items 2 and 3?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it's a unanimous vote to approve items 2 and 3 of the consent items. Okay. Item E, financial manager's report. This is the Heidi.
As of January 31st, the total cash in all accounts and including reserves was $775,368.77. Total income to date was $2,307,267.58. Total expenses were $992,195.39, leaving a net profit of $1,315,072.19. Because of all the rain, there was not much work done on the Works Down Ditch piping project, so far to date, the engineering and piping on Dobbins, Oregon House Ditch is a grand total of $73,384.50. And that concludes my report.
Okay, any comments from directors? Questions, discussion?
I have a question, Heidi, on the equipment and automobile. We have $75,000, and that's from July to January. That's a lot of money. Did we buy something for $75,000, or is that?
It's miscellaneous items.
So it's just like oil changes and brake jobs?
No, that's not in there.
Oh, okay.
That's more like capital purchases.
I didn't hear you. Capital what?
Purchases?
Do you need a chance to go back and look at it all?
Yeah,
Okay, can I get that from you then later? That's just a lot of money. I would just like to see the breakdown on where that $75,000 went. The other question I had two other questions. One is about the grant funding application. Is this, was this a fee that was paid to North Star, or was this an actual fee to submit an application, or was that paying a consultant to do an application? Because that's also a lot of money. And you can get back to me on that if you need to.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry, I cannot hear you.
You can answer if you
I
want.
am talking.
Well, I know,
You
but
have
you have to talk
open
out
meeting,
loud.
we need to hear you. Brown Act.
You know, you should give an answer.
Huh?
If you know the answer.
I'm not, I think it was all the North Star.
So it was North Star, and they filed a grant application for us, so that was the bill that they billed us for then?
I would have to look into that.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. And then the last question is $275,658 for the Forbes Town Ditch geotechnical pre-design. The contract that I have for North Star having to do with Forbes Town Ditch only authorized $43,000. Were there other task orders that were issued on that contract, or is this a completely separate contract?
I'll go back and look at it and get your answer.
Okay, and if there's new task orders that have been issued for that contract, could you please send me those? Because as of right now, I only have a contract authorization for $43,000 for North Star for the Fordstown Ditch. So I appreciate that, and that's all. Thank you, Heidi.
Anyone else?
No, I'd just like to recommend that what I've found has been very helpful is when I have questions about financial issues, I'll either make an appointment or come in early for a meeting and sit down with Heidi and get those answers. And so she's not having to stumble in a meeting looking for answers. And then if you think it's an item that's important for the public, then bring it up. She's prepared with an answer. So that's just the way I do it. You can, this way you're gonna get the answer after the fact rather than before. Just a
Yeah,
thought.
well, it'll be good to find out, so I can certainly do that as long as making an appointment is is acceptable.
The other thing I'd like to see is it go through me because her time is scheduled, she has a full-time job. So as we take on these tasks, I'd like to be able to work them into her schedule instead of overwhelm her.
Well, I will need to make appointments to get some explanations to meet our fiduciary responsibilities as board
And
directors, so.
give you all your answers, but I just, she
So-
works for me and she has to go, her time schedule has to go through me.
Mhm.
Anyone else? No? Public comment? Can you come up, please?
Again,
Whoa!
Did we break it?
well, it has a little slope now.
That'll be
Things
in
won't-
your,
things
that'll
won't
be in
roll
your,
off.
that'll be in your water bill.
There you go. Terry, your approach to how this is handled is the perfect approach, that there should be interfacing from the directors with Heidi and you together to answer the questions as soon as possible. The lack of transparency here tonight about this, looking with each other and trying to figure it all out and then whispering over here. We're talking our money, guys. It's our money. We need to know what's going on with it. Thank you.
That's part of one of my cedar trees.
I guess you're gonna have to repair it now, Lauren, sorry.
I can handle that.
Anyone else? Public comment? Hearing none?
I have one last comment, please. Name's Kwanzaa Vinci. This comment is kind of from the comment section previously. However, got to do with what's going on right now. This is why it's so important to record these meetings for your guys' benefit and liability along with the public's. Thank you.
Anyone else? None. Okay, I need a motion to approve the financial manager's report.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second. All in favor of approving item E, financial manager's report?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey,
Hearing opposed? Yeah. Anyone opposed? Abstained? Hearing none. Item E, pass. Okay. Item F, resolution 19-730, resolution of the Board of Directors of North Yuba Water District concurring the nomination of Brent Hasty of the Yuba County Water Agency to the Executive Committee of the ACWA JPIA.
This was a request by the agency to see if we would support him. So
Can you speak a little bit louder, please?
I'm sorry, this was a request of the Yuba Water Agency that we might support Brent Hasty in this calling. That's how it made it to the agenda.
President Hanser, if I may. This is the second time a resolution has shown up on this agenda where the board did not instruct a resolution to be created. And this is becoming, this is a bit of a problem. If the, Aqua folks reached out and wanted some concurrence on nominations, then that outreach should have been to the directors of the board and should have occurred in a public meeting setting. I also would like to know who else may be up for this same position. And I think it would be a great idea if Mr. Hasty wants us to concur with his nomination, that he should come here and give, I don't know this person, give us some kind of presentation, at least let us know who you are, what do you stand for, what is your record, are there other people that are there? I find this putting the cart before the horse, a resolution showing up on an agenda where none of us, at least I certainly had no knowledge of this until it just appeared on the agenda. And it seems to me that this is the cart before the horse. And I really don't want to see this kind of thing again. If any resolutions are created, it needs to be at the direction of the board.
Very odd.
So, I guess the way I would probably respond to that would be.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
I like to talk to people to see if they're willing to comment before they're committed. So if it's just a courtesy to ask people, if she wishes to comment, isn't it nice that I asked her first?
Out loud
Okay,
would be
so.
okay.
Out loud.
Out loud.
Well,
That's fine, yes, thank you.
excuse me, I was actually speaking, and
So
last
sorry.
time I checked, I think I'm supposed to be running the meeting, so let me.
Would it help if I
speak.
repeated my request?
So,
No.
my response to you, Gretchen, on that is, item F is no different than what you're gonna see when Terry speaks on G and H. Now, you have a vote. You can vote on this.
Your attorney can comment on it as well.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
sure.
Go ahead.
Well, I was,
Give me some
Just as-
feedback on that.
well, being a member of AQUA for, I don't know, over 20 years now, this is quite common that you will get these kind of requests from different folks that are in your area or where the district has an opportunity to vote on a particular person. I was at another client on Monday night and the exact same thing was presented to them. They, the same person, same request, concur in the nomination. This doesn't mean that he's going to make the executive committee. It's just nominating as one of the candidates that they can then appoint to that executive committee. So we see this from AQUA and other agencies, other affiliations quite often.
Which I can understand that. My objection here, am I speaking loud enough for you, Mr. Olson? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
My voice carries, so I don't usually have a problem with that. My objection to this is not that this is being asked for as a concurrence. My objection is the way it's being presented on our agenda, which is as a resolution. With G and H, these are discussion items. With G, this is the result of a resolution that showed up last time where it was a surprise, it was not done at the direction of the board. Here we have, and thankfully Vice President Brown said, no, we need to just revisit this. If we're gonna do an appreciation, we're gonna do it. And so we discussed and we came up as a board with the idea of, okay, we do want to have a resolution, we're gonna do it this way. What my objection is to having this on the agenda as a resolution, because we are the governing body. And it is up to us to instruct the general manager and secretary as to what we want to see on our agenda and whether or not a resolution should be prepared. So if this had been presented as a discussion item, not a resolution, I wouldn't have had an objection to it at all. Because yeah, we should discuss it. Clearly this is a normal part of doing the business and whatnot. And then we could discuss it, but the way it was presented is as a resolution, which is actually implying that now we have to take a first and a second, and we have to vote and blah, 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 and it's not even a discussion item. And so that's what my objection is. We're the governing body. We are the ones that direct the general manager in formulating a resolution. It's at our direction. That's my point.
Is that your understanding?
Well, what I typically see and what is often done is that the general manager does present normal day-to-day operational issues and places them on the agenda, including proposed draft resolutions that you can modify and discuss and disapprove or approve. So.
But the difference is that if it's a resolution, that's something we may have to take action on. This doesn't let us just have a discussion and decide, let's do a resolution. I mean, the next thing after a resolution is an ordinance, right? So a resolution is actually some sort of a legal document that's requiring that we have to, give it a first, give it a second, then we all have to vote.
Well,
And-
you can vote, you can decide not to vote on, you can move it to, you can have a discussion and decide that you don't wanna vote at it. You can move it to the next meeting if you want further discussion.
I think what my point is by putting it as a resolution, we've skipped a step. The board as the governing body is the body that should decide something should be presented as a resolution, because we've already kind of decided, we kind of want to go in this direction, so let's do a resolution. So a step has been skipped over, which is here's this guy, he wants this nomination, do you guys want to talk about this nomination? Do you want to formulate a resolution to approve the nomination? That's the step, that's how the step should have occurred, instead of it getting to this point, because now what we have to do is decide, well, are we gonna vote for this or not vote for this? Are we gonna do a first, or are we gonna do a second? All I'm saying is it was putting the cart before the horse. And I for one, don't wanna see this type of thing in the future, because we're the governing board. It's our responsibility to govern. It's our responsibility to come up with the resolutions, to come up with our policies. That's our job. And by putting it as a resolution, that job's been taken away from us. And now all we get to do is say, well, let's talk about it, and let's do a first and a second, and then we'll vote, and, what have you. I mean, like I said, I don't know this person, and so to even get to a point of saying, hey, I wanna, if this individual wrote to the board, I never received a copy. If this individual wrote to the general manager, then a good approach would have been, hey, I'm gonna put it on the agenda, and maybe I should invite the guy to come and talk. I don't know, maybe all of you already know this gentleman. I don't. I've never met this man, and I don't know what his record is. I don't vote on anything without doing the background research. And so to just have this person arbitrarily show up, who are the other people? What if we wanna concur on nomination for someone else? And that's my point.
It strikes me that we've had a discussion just now, and you can vote no. So what's the difference between the discussion we just had and voting to put it on the agenda to have another vote to approve it, and us having a discussion like has happened just now, and then if you're still not happy, vote no. You're one of 5 voices.
Excuse me, let the director have his time.
I'm curious, because I don't see the need to put this out for another month. If we understand your concerns, vote no.
Mr. Nielsen, you're missing the point.
No, I'm not missing the point.
Excuse me.
Okay, we need to.
You'll have a moment to comment on this one. Wrap up.
So,
Well, my point, taking a step back, there are 2 things going on. One is resolutions that are being put on the agenda. That's our job, is to decide whether or not we're going to craft a resolution. Let's say we want to craft a let's say we decide we need a dress code. Let's put a resolution together. And then we say to Mr. Maupin, we'd like you to write us a resolution on a dress code. Everyone has to wear a pink tutu next time, right? I knew that was what you wanted. So let's say we decide on that. That's following the process. We've decided we need to do something. We're gonna have them write a resolution, then we're gonna discuss it. There's gonna be public input, yada, yada. If a resolution is already put on here, the governing part of our body has been suborned. It has been removed from the process. It's up to us to decide what we want to put into a resolution or we don't want to put into a resolution. So that's one piece.
The other piece is, yeah, I can vote no, and I probably will, because I don't know this guy. And if this individual had, if this had been presented in a different way, which is, hey, Brett Heston is on our agenda, he's gonna come and make a presentation because he'd like us to concur with his nomination, that would have been great. Then I could have said, okay, now I can actually evaluate this person and decide if I want to go ahead and vote to nominate him. But as it stands, all I have is this really scary looking picture of some guy. Honestly, that was a really terrible picture. And I have this, and I don't vote on anything based on something like this, ever. So it's a two-parter. It isn't that I don't want this guy. I don't know if I want this guy or not. And yeah, I can vote no, and I will vote no. I can tell you right now I'll vote no. But the bottom line is resolutions should be undertaken because the board has given instruction to undertake a resolution. I rest my case.
Public? Can you come up to the podium, please?
You know, if I don't, my
Oh,
hip is
okay.
really bothering me, but if you don't mind. There has been a precedent set on these type of things. In the last several years, there were two people that came to this board to ask for things to be resolutions. One was Mr. Buck Weckman, who came to talk to this district for support for his anti-cannabis movement issue. He talked to the board then decided whether they were gonna vote on it, they voted on it, the outcome doesn't matter. The second person was Mr. Charlie Matthews, who's also on the agency board with Brent Hasty. He came and spoke to this district about his Water Act, and the board got to meet him, ask questions, and it seems there are two issues here. One, I agree with Director Floor that it's a policy issue that the board needs to make for resolutions, but number two is if someone wants to be elected or appointed or nominated, they should come and introduce themselves to the body that he wants to have or she wants to have vote for him. And I can tell you right now, he's in Washington, D.C., so he's probably not going to make it here tonight. I do Facebook him, so I know Brent is in Washington with Aqua right now. But anyway, needless to say, it's if somebody wants support, they should at least come and talk to you guys. I mean, that's very common sense protocol.
Thank you. Anyone else? Come up.
I can't see what it's doing.
You could just stand right next to it.
Darlene Kearns, Brownsville. Well, the whole point of this conversation, it seems to me, is that Mr. Moffin has usurped the authority of the board. That's the crux of the whole matter. That's as I see it. I mean, is that what you're saying? I mean, he never should have made this move without first seeking the approval of the board. And that's all I have to say. I mean, he stepped out of line.
May I speak? Donna Corson, Robbins, the next page kind of says it all. Certification. I don't remember seeing certification on resolutions before. I hereby certify that the foregoing is a full, correct is the key word here, and true copy of a resolution passed by the board of directors. What Ms. Floor has been saying is that you haven't followed correct procedure for making resolutions. It's part of the process. Thank you.
All right, as you know, you've already been given notifications about previous Brown Act violations. This can be construed as a Brown Act violation, and we will just go ahead and report it, send it on to the DA to compile a dossier on this. You have surrendered your responsibility to the manager. You have surrendered your responsibility to the manager. and this is a serial issue. There was a resolution last month, as we know, that was never discussed by you. No motion made for it to appear, but yet it appeared. This is the second time. It's serial. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes. My name is Kwanzaa Vinci, for the record. I really didn't foresee speaking this much, only my opening statement. I was thinking about even maybe saying that for the next one. I've been on bylaw committees, action committees, executive committees. As you heard, the community, they've spoke kind of on the terms and lingo of that. So I'll do it in the sense of the analogy of any sports. Football, for example. Al Davis, I was going to use Kraft. The great owners know how to let their general managers be general managers. The general managers know how to let the coach be the coach. Then they know how to let the skill position players be the ones that really work with the position players. So that's where you gather your feedback, your intelligence. And I think that's kind of the discussion. Because I would honestly, as a community member, if there is somebody that is representing an outside agency, I would like to be able to see them. I may not ask questions, but I would like to see them face our board. I honestly would with our water. Thank you.
Anyone else? So, I have a question for you on that. In your experience, what do you see, is this the format that you see resolutions brought to boards like this?
This type of resolution is brought by the general manager in every instance I've ever seen. It's not a pre-discussion. There are times where that particular person that's looking for support will come in, and many times where they don't. It's just up to that particular person that's seeking your support. So I've never seen it have a pre-discussion by the board to say that we're going to, this has been requested of us from this particular individual. Do you guys want to put it on the agenda next month? Usually there's not enough time, frankly. But that's what I've seen. You guys can engage whatever practice you want. I will say it's not a violation of the Brown Act.
Thank you.
It's properly agendized.
Okay, so I need a motion to either approve. We're moving on. Need a motion to approve item F.
I make a motion to approve item F.
I second the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Abstain?
Okay, that was 25 minutes.
I would like to say something.
We're moving on.
How many
Item G,
people know
excuse me,
him?
we're moving
How
on.
many know him?
You're gonna have to leave. You're interrupting it now and you're gonna leave.
I don't understand.
Excuse me.
It says
I-
before and
You may
during
leave
and
now.
after.
Now. You're interrupting me, leave.
I apologize for
No,
interrupting.
leave, I'm done.
No.
Just have a seat.
No, we're not continuing the meeting till you leave. If you don't want to, we can end the whole meeting right now.
Or
I
could
did
You're out of here.
nothing wrong. I don't understand.
You're out of here.
I asked a question.
Go. Now.
We'll just go.
No.
You're out of here.
We'll just go.
I have a right to ask a question. If I interrupted
Okay.
you, I'm
Well-
sorry.
You have the option to clear the room, adjourn the meeting. You have another.
Could we hear what the attorney says, please?
Well, it's up to the board president to run the meeting as he chooses within the Brown Act.
Are you choosing to stay in the
Rules.
room or not?
I'd like to know how many people know this man you're voting on. It's a
Okay.
crucial point.
I'm gonna ask the whole room be cleared at this point. Everybody,
It's
out.
really cold out there.
I'm sorry, out. We're done, go.
So you're calling the meeting off?
I'm asking for the room to be cleared. It's to be cleared at this point. You guys need to exit out the door. Thank you.
Are you aware of the fact that
Excuse
you
me.
represent us people also in addition to the water district? I'm leaving so you can relaxate.
This is not America.
Out.
This is not America.
I
You
don't
and that
believe
this
we
is
can
not
have a
America.
meeting
I
at
don't know
all
what it
if
is,
the
but it's
public is
not
out
America.
at the
You
door.
guys
I have a
have
concern with that as
to
well.
take some fiduciary
I'm
responsibility.
concerned with that as well,
Yeah.
because you're excluding the entire public
Yeah, you
based on
can't.
one person's.
Here it is.
I think what his.
This is not America. I don't know what it is. What is it? Communist Russia?
I can't hear, can you speak up, please?
Yeah,
Oh, really?
I think what we need to do is just take a slight break
Yes.
and just everybody calm down and let's see if we can't manage this meeting in a civil way. So, I understand you wanna ask a question.
It was a simple question.
I understand that, but the item was already concluded. So I suggest when you want to discuss an item, you discuss it before the board concludes that item. And not
I
interrupt the board president when he's moving on to the next item. And again, there's no obligation for any one of these board members to answer any questions from the audience. You can make comments, but there's nothing in the Brown Act that requires them to answer. They can choose to answer, but they're not obligated. So, the biggest thing is that the board president is trying to run an orderly meeting, and when you start arguing with him, you're disrupting
I
that.
requested to ask a question. I requested to ask a question.
No, and you said that item was concluded, and you continued.
He did that the last meeting and it was wrong.
I asked repeatedly
And
if there was
when he
anyone
asked
else.
for,
You waited till I moved to item G to let me know you wanted to speak. We
Right.
already moved on.
right,
That's what I
that,
was saying. We had moved on. You had an opportunity. I clearly looked around the room and asked, anyone else? So
That's not what the.
that's where I'm at with that.
Well, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think once the director, I'm sorry, president, once the president has said, do we have a motion, things have been concluded at that point, right?
right.
Right.
You can do it, because he opened public comment on the matter
You're right,
before the motion,
Everybody calm down.
then,
right.
you know, that, the public comment, and he's been asking all evening, is anybody else? And he's given plenty of opportunity for persons to come up.
Yep.
And once that item's done, and public comment period's closed, it's closed. That item's done. And I was here last meeting too, and I noticed that you know, once the item was closed, you wanna say something, but that
I
item's
was
closed.
closed down from asking the question before. That- I
Well,
didn't
we're trying to make
understand.
sure
That's
you're
what I'm
not,
trying to explain.
we're trying to make sure you're not closed down, but I encourage you to speak during public comment when he asks for public
Thank you.
comment.
I promise.
Because that will make things go a lot
I
smoother.
understand. Thank you.
And I think also, just if I might, if people raise their hands, it helps things to be a lot more orderly.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think President Hansard is gonna know that, unless you do this. So, I would do that.
Well, I looked around pretty well. I didn't see any.
Right.
We're moving on, so that's why we
He
did
probably
that.
doesn't need a lot of comment about this activity. I think he's a pretty sharp, smart guy, knows what the hell he's doing.
Okay.
So we call for a motion, I guess. You've had board discussion, you've had public discussion. Right. Have you had sufficient board discussion?
Which item are you on?
We already voted.
We voted, we voted.
Move on.
Yeah, we're on the next item,
We're on
right?
G.
We're on G.
We're on item G.
I got it.
Okay. Item G, Vice President Brown, approved items for discussion from the previous board meeting. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you and you can let us know
Well,
where we're at.
what you got in your board packet, Director Manager Moffett and I discussed kind of where we wanted to go on this, and I think we both ended up in different places. So what came in your board packet is what he put together. And then, after I read what he had done, I put together the attachment that you have loose on your table there, and it's very rough. I just threw it together and sent it to Jeff and said, well, this is more what I had in mind. And he said, well, just bring it to the meeting and we'll discuss it. I think where he was going on it was a single resolution to acknowledge the past board and even the current board. And is that the way I read that?
Yeah, it allows you to nominate or to create a resolution of appreciation. So that was the idea, that you could go back in time, you could do currently, you could do anyone that you choose to acknowledge or to give a resolution to. It was available to you. You only had to say the person's name and agree that you felt that way.
So that maybe I didn't really understand it. So the one, I don't know, have any of you had time to take a look at what I did?
I like what you did, Terry. I think that's great because it gives us ways of showing appreciation not just to board directors, but to other folks as well.
And I'm not so sure that we need to vote on it. I'd kind of like to have you think about what you'd like and what changes you'd make. And if you're happy with the one that was in the packet, then that's okay too.
Well, that handles number one of your list of three. So one approach would be to use what Jeff drew up as a resolution and accept it as handling the number one resolution item. And then the other two would have potentially more discussion on it. Does that seem fair?
It does, but do we want three different policies, or do we want to just, I don't know.
Well, my question is, a resolution, I mean, so one of these would be written in each person's name? Is that how that works?
I think that's where I was confused too. I wasn't sure if this was just gonna be one generic one that was gonna go to everybody.
Because it seems like maybe like a certificate, I mean, something nice you could put on a wall and say, wow, look at that, something like that might be, because I don't know, I mean.
I don't know the idea is conclusive. It was an idea from our conversation that I thought we were trying to create some broad brush document that would be applicable to vendors, to board members, to the public who might participate in helping the district. But as far as the policy, I wasn't sure how to proceed on that, so Director Brown gave you an idea there of what he had in mind.
So this resolution is just a recognition of past and current board members. It doesn't.
And employees and vendors. It's not a policy for resolutions.
This isn't a policy, this is a resolution.
Correct.
And it just addresses the board members.
She's not seeing this issue.
Do you have the handout?
Yeah, I must not have it, because the one I have is just board members.
Well, this is what Director Brown created.
Okay.
In more detail. And he broke it out into three different areas.
Because it seems like if you could do a certificate for each of those three categories. You could do one for these, you could do one for this, and one for that. You could do a certificate, yeah.
It also seems like the resolution item is a sort of higher level appreciation mechanism than the commendation and the appreciation part. In other words, it sounds to me like you, as a general manager, would be in a good position to do the letters of commendation and the appreciation. But the resolution part of it would come from the board, and it would give it like the board signatures on the certificate or whatever, so that it has a kind of a little bit bigger audience or a little bit stronger meaning than a commendation or an appreciation letter. Is that what you intended, Terry?
Yeah, it's kind of morphing a little bit, but I kind of wanted to cover other areas too.
Why is this needed? In the sense that anybody can put forth the idea of giving a resolution or letter of appreciation. It can be discussed, it can come up for a vote. Why do we need this? Because it seems we can already do this right now and have done it.
And have not done it.
Well, previous. So,
And I think this kind of puts it under the bright light.
okay.
That's kind of where I was trying to go on it, to make it something that you actually think about.
Okay, but if you make, again, I'm not disagreeing with this, it seems like I can already do everything on there. Bright light or no, I can make a resolution to send out a letter of appreciation to anybody. And as long as the board agrees and that there will be some discussion based on that, then it can become an agenda item, however you want to do it. But whether this is in place or not doesn't stop me from doing that.
I think maybe it helps you. Sometimes we get busy with things and don't think about it. But if it's in writing, if it's a policy, you might be more likely to push something else aside to take care of this.
Okay.
I've seen it not happen in the past
Mm-hmm.
when it could have.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm convincing.
I still, well, I mean, to me, it's neither here nor there. It comes up for a vote, fine. But how many, we have something like 15 resolutions or policies, something like that. I got a list. And it's not clear that people have it in their heads what's in those resolutions anyway. So if you feel the need, somebody's been passed by, somebody's been ignored, somebody's been let out who's fully deserving, any of us can bring that up. The other thing that, as long as this doesn't make it automatic, somebody goes out the door, they've done their job, the policy says, you know.
I think May is in there quite often.
Yeah. Okay, either way, but yeah, I think we can do all of this without needing to have a formal policy, especially when our policies tend to be things like domestic vehicle replacement, and irrigation, and letters of appreciation. I just don't think it rises to that level. I don't think you can get it wrong if you decide to do a letter of appreciation, by all means. And remember that if you bring it forth, you got to put it together for presentation to the board so you can get it right.
You're talking on a case-by-case basis.
Case by case, yeah.
The person who brings it up would be.
I mean, if somebody here thinks, boy, that vendor just really did a bang up job, helped us, saved us, whatever you want to say, I want to have a letter of appreciation sent to them.
Oh, you're gonna come back to me to write it?
No, but if I was the one, yeah, well, that's the thing. If I was the one who said, gee, I think this is, let's put this on the agenda and it's agreed, then it's in my ballpark, court, whatever the term is, to put it all together, write it up, and do it. That's what our policy about this kind of thing says, agendas. But not having this doesn't really stop me from saying, gee, I really like the work that guy did, that person. I'll put forth the letter of recommendation or letter of appreciation whether this exists or not. And I think all of us would. So. Now mind you, voting for this is a matter of seconds, so this isn't a question of I'm trying to save time right now.
It's a discussion item, so we have to.
What are your thoughts?
I like the idea of having it more personal on a case-by-case basis. I think that you could target the actual, what that person did a little bit closer to a T. Say like it's a supplier, you could really, hone in on the exact actions they did. Whereas this might be.
This would not change that.
Because the text of the certificate's not listed.
Alright, so really it's kind of,
That's something the board
I guess it's
member
more or
would
less
agree on.
guidelines, I guess is what I'm looking at, of how it would be structured, or who would get it. I don't know, I feel like I need a little time to go over it and think about it a little more than.
Gary?
I think you need to pitch it again in a, with a different twist, like maybe create the 4 certificates so that we have real sample in our hand about what you're talking about. But I don't see that, I guess I kind of agree with Doug that I don't see the purpose of the resolution, but I understand the purpose of the letter or the commendation.
Yeah.
Terry, if you would like to work together in an ad hoc sense on developing sort of templates for each of these 3, I'd be happy to do that with you. And bring something back to the table next time that's a little more formal than an outline.
That's my 5-minute job.
I'm pretty good at this, I'm sure I can help you. And I'm willing to do that if you want.
Yeah, only if there's interest.
I think it's a great idea
Mm-hmm.
for Gretchen to help. That gets me and Doug and Eric enough.
So this way, all 5 of us discuss it. So, if you bring back templates, then we have to stick with the templates. And if we're not going to stick with the templates, back to my original question, I guess I just don't, this isn't forcing us to do anything, it's not forcing us not to do anything. And we can, each of us, appreciate whoever we need to appreciate formally through the board, whether this exists or not. I just don't think it's necessary.
I'm willing to work with you. I think it's a great idea because this way we make sure that people do get the appreciation when they've done a job. So I think it's a great idea. I'm willing to work with you. We can we can work on templates, we can bring them back. Everyone can have their input. If we come back a 3rd time, that's fine too.
Just table it.
So I'll second that.
So, you table it, you can bring it back up
He brings it.
at a later date with more info, correct? Or is it
But
brought back
that's-
in the same form, and how does that work? I guess my question is to Harbor on that. If you table an item and you bring it back to the board, does it come back in this form or does it come back revised?
I think you direct what you want done. If you want, this, you would like more work and more time to fully develop this policy. You could give examples. You don't have to say this is the only way that you can do the certification or the letter of, commendation. These are just examples of what the board could adopt, and it's all, ultimately, I agree with Director Nielsen, you're gonna do it on an individual basis, and you're gonna modify, these are just simply, you're trying to create a policy for guideline purposes. And if you wanna more fully develop it based on this discussion, then that's what you decide to do, and bring it back for the next agenda, or whenever you're ready.
And I think we still have to have public input on the item.
Yes, before the vote.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't even think you need a vote, you can just simply,
Oh,
it's
if
a
he tables it.
discussion item, and you're indicating that generally you agree consensus that additional work needs to be done on it, and it'll be brought back. You can certainly take public comment
As a
on that,
discussion item when it comes back?
or whatever you're ready to do.
So if we want it to be a discussion item, we don't have to take a vote on it. If we want it to be a action item, we're gonna have to take a vote on it for a majority.
And if he takes it,
No, I'm sorry, take that back. For an action item, it's, how many do we need to have vote on that?
3.
In this situation, you gotta have 3 on it, or is it?
I think you're referring to the resolutions that are in place.
No, Terry's. Right here.
Terry tables this, he goes off, beefs it up, does whatever he needs, however he needs it done or thinks it needs to be done. He then brings it back and resubmits it. He does, he tabled it, so he resubmits. And we can do that, if I understand it, as a consensus.
Right.
We just say, yeah, we agree, there's no need for a vote, there's no action in that sense.
So he has to get it back on the agenda,
Right,
and we have to agree to getting it on the agenda.
right. Which
Which,
sounds like the majority of you agree that you want further work on this policy and have it brought back, either for discussion or
Right. Yeah.
adoption.
Another way of saying it is that this shows promise, needs work. It's just not quite compelling
Got it.
yet.
So,
So we're gonna,
you wanna hear public comment?
yeah, let me take public comment. Go ahead.
Just real quickly, I admired Vice President Brown's efforts to do this. In general, having a policy is the best way to move forward on anything with this district, because it gives direction not only to the board, but to the manager and staff. There's something written that the board has approved, no matter what it is. So having a policy regarding this, I think, is wonderful. Again, going back to the past, I know for sure board members have been recognized in the past, 15 years ago, with plaques. Framed certificates of appreciation were given to directors as either they resigned or they got, elected out, whatever all the reason. They got mentioned and shown appreciation by the district and the board in the form of an appreciation letter or something framed. And so if Director Floor is going to be helping you, those are things I think maybe even the district may have. Maybe they have copies of it somewhere, because I know for a fact several directors did get those in the past. So it's up to you, but I think a policy is a very good way to go, and I support what you're doing.
Policy's not just for you today, but it's for future board members. That's another beauty of having a policy. And I applaud what you've done, Terry. It's great. And there's a very simple recognition that seems to have been taken away from this room. There used to be historic plaques on this back wall that had the term, years, and the names of the directors on the wall. I don't know if it's been moved somewhere else in the offices, but that's a very simple recognition that should be continued. It's too bad this has been taken down.
they're being updated. Some of those plaques were 20 years out of date, 15 years out of date, so
Great,
there was work.
that's good to hear.
More? Okay. Item H. Item H will be Gary. Item H, Director Hawthorne, approved items for discussion from our previous board meeting. I'm gonna go ahead and read these out here. 1A, provide periodic communication to the customer base about the supply of irrigation water. 1B, locate and retain a reliable weather forecasting company. 1C, a customer briefing at the Alcoof Community Center in March, sponsored by the North Yuba Water District. 2A, revise the irrigation policy to include a plan to sign new customers after the piping is complete. 3A, include maps and pictures to help inform the customers of technical water issues. And 3B, offer a brief question and answer session during the board meeting. So at this time, we'll go and turn it over to Gary.
Sure.
These for us.
Those are for you, members. It's one page. I slightly rewrote some of the wording, but the point here is the customers of the irrigation business need to know more or less what's going to happen this summer, because they're going to go out and buy cows, or they're going to go out and buy okra seed, and they need to know they're going to have a vegetable garden, and it's going to be practical, it's going to be useful, it's going to work. And my sense of what I've heard in the last couple of years is that there wasn't much communication between the irrigation management and the customers about what's going to go on, what's happening this summer. Now, at the risk of promising people something that you can't promise, which is that the weather's going to be excellent and we're going to have plenty of rainwater and snow, and then you get sued because your okra seeds never sprouted. At the risk of that, with the right wording, I do think that we have to provide periodic communication to the customer base about irrigation business, especially in the spring. So this is particularly important in March, April, May, because that's when you're going to go buy all the compost and you're going to do all the work to get your garden prepared for the most part. Some of what I think would be helpful would be, we could possibly do without this idea, but I'd like to think that there's some kind of a weather forecasting operation going on that's maybe reliable enough to tell us what the water flow is likely to be in Dry Creek. We know that SF-14 and the Little Grass Valley Reservoir water is almost always good. We don't know how long it's going to last, but for the irrigation folks, the real trick is the Dry Creek, what's going to happen with Dry Creek. And so I'm hoping there might be some mechanism, some way to find a company, a weather company, or a commercial enterprise that's already in existence, like Channel 3 in Sacramento, where we could take reliable information. And then finally, I think it'd be a good idea to keep, to have a meeting intimate enough with the folks to bring them into a public building and to have the board or the general manager explain what's happening, what's going to happen this summer with the irrigation season. So I'd like to leave it at that for the first part, for item number 1. So I'd like to ask support for this idea of informing the customer base in the spring about what we think is going to happen with the irrigation business. Any comment?
I support that idea Gary, and I also want to provide a little bit of information for you. I don't know if you're aware that South Feather gets weather data, very reliable weather data from PG&E. We are, by extension, business partners as much with PG&E as we are with South Feather. And you can get weather data from them. It's very comprehensive weather data from them, free of cost. All you have to do is ask for it. The other thing that you can get from South Feather is they have a hydrographer who goes out and actually measures the snow pack. And again, you can get those data free from South Feather. It's also
They measure
very
it
accurate.
around Challenge.
They measure it all over the place, multiple locations. The other thing I do also want to point out is I'm not really clear on where this idea came from that snowpack is what's crucial for Dry Creek. One thing I know is that hydrologic study hasn't been done, and until the hydrological study has been done that shows what the water sources are for Dry Creek, we don't know everything. But those data you can get from these folks free of charge, and it's very comprehensive data. So I completely agree with what you're saying. It's something I would like to see is regular communications with the customers, because that's one of the things that they're very unhappy about.
Yeah, I've been working on this idea for a while, and I do think it's a key piece of the puzzle. Any other comment? So,
I guess the question I have is I kind of want to know if we were to hire our own weather forecaster, let's just say, I want to know what cost would that be? You know, what are we looking at cost-wise, something like that?
well, like Gretchen says, you'd have to know the exact area that you're focusing on. Where does the water come that comes down Dry Creek from Challenge? So there was an argument around here the last couple of years that it comes from the High Sierra snowpack. I don't think so.
It doesn't.
I think it comes from the watershed right above where, yeah.
It's up at the top of Challenge grade.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so the trick would be to find the company that knows what's happening right at that spot. So just to clarify, is there any agreement that the snowpack in Challenge is the key to Dry Creek? Is there any disagreement about that?
You're saying it's
It's
not, right? Because it's not.
It's above Challenge.
Well, it's in the watershed of the Challenge water. The Dry Creek is below where the water comes from.
If you go up to Scales, the rivers there tend to flow straight to the Yuba. There are two branches of Dry Creek above the Challenge grade, and they're relatively short. One feeds into potentially a spring, or a spring feeds into it. But generally speaking, they don't extend far enough, and it's a bowl sort of. Am I misreading?
No, that's how it's done.
Yeah. So we know the general whereabouts. We were actually going to walk it, and haven't yet. But it was it's right above Challenge grade. You need the snowpack. Essentially, they're up to say Woodleaf, Clipper Mills maybe. But Clipper Mills, you're getting really close to where it's going to flow either over to Lost Creek and Sly Creek, or if you're on the other side, it's going to flow to the Yuba River.
Do you know of anyone that offers that kind of weather information that's right in that area?
I've never looked for snow from him, but Ben Borzoff, who runs the Strawberry Valley store up there, has a weather station, and it's actually reported by the National Weather Service.
Is this the page?
What's it?
No, this is what I gave you last time.
Ben's rain gauge, the thing that's in the newspaper, is actually pulled out of a much larger data set. He's been doing it for 25 years, something. It's an incredible amount. But he's Strawberry Valley, which is a little bit farther.
Where's the nearest Simmies station?
I don't know.
because that's the most accurate weather that you can get is from the semi stations.
But up here, we do have a
So-
lot of individuals that have their own weather stations and they feed back into Weather Underground and all that. I just know that Ben has been given awards for his record keeping because he's been so long at it and so meticulous.
So I could
He'd be
probably
your
call
best
him and
one.
ask him
Yeah, yeah,
how I could go about doing this.
yeah.
Unless you're saying that South Weather or PG&E already does challenge.
These guys have a huge data set. It's a massive data set. I just got a copy of the most recent data set. In fact, their hydrographer is out right now measuring all the snowpacks. So I can forward you that data set if you want to look at
Is
it.
it something that's tailorable to
Oh, yeah.
our interests?
Yeah, absolutely. They send it in raw form, so
Okay.
I can kind of see where some of the items in one coincide with three, where it's use more maps and pictures. I mean, to maybe see like a topo map of the area, so we can know what area we're actually talking about. What is our watershed area?
Right.
And then whoever we talk to, or whoever you talk to get a price from, they need to be aware of that. So I would think that would be number one item, is figure out where is our actual watershed.
this might help you.
Okay, good.
Okay, so I'm gonna pass this out to all of you guys. This is also something that Doug may find useful.
Is this the South Feather?
This is a lot. This is,
Because I already go up to South.
these are my maps. These are GIS maps that
Mhm.
I've prepared. And I kind of prepared them for a couple reasons. And this is one of the things that I would have liked to have shown you in an ad hoc committee situation, but the public has also been provided copies of these maps. They are a work in progress.
They look a lot like my maps.
They're a work in progress, and the only thing that's missing at this point is WD5 and WD6.
Okay, so just to try to get past number one, items on number one. D, item D. If we have good information, we probably don't need a customer briefing in the spring, because we can talk about that during the general manager's report of the board meeting, and we can put it on our website, and we can put it in the newsletter. So how do you folks feel about a customer briefing in the spring at the Alcoove for the irrigation customers?
Well, you've been doing that, haven't you?
We've been doing it for the last 3 years, but what's different is I don't want to do it under the aegis of a different organization. I want to do it under the aegis of the North Yuba Water District. And we had a problem with that in the past because there was a sense that it was a campaign effort. In other words, people accuse me of it being electioneering for me to have a customer briefing. And so I decided I needed to stay away from that problem. So I invited, and I had a private meeting just for the customers. I invited people. Now, I don't want to continue to do it that way. I want it to be done under the auspices of the North Yuba Water District. So,
My take on it, I would think, this is an item that affects your constituents directly,
and hers,
and yours.
and cemeteries.
So, in my personal feeling, is that something that could be brought up in a meeting that you hold on your own with them? Since you are the representative of you and Terry, portion of yours, that's my personal feeling.
Well, if we do a meeting with Gary and myself,
We're
then,
violating the Brown Act.
Kinda cool.
no, not if it's a public meeting. If it's a public
No,
meeting.
we're
and-
talking about the planning of
Oh,
the
the
meeting.
planning of it. Yeah.
We can't plan it, we have to let it plan itself, or make Terry do the whole thing.
Or we can just have two of us meet and plan it, and the other guy can just be the third wheel on the day that we have it.
That'd be
That
nice.
should be an ad hoc committee then.
Yeah. So 2 people would have to plan it, which I'm totally willing, I've said that before, I'm totally willing to work on ad hoc committees for just about anything that we need to do, so.
Okay, give me the gist of what the board thinks about this type of a meeting with the customer base.
How much does it cost?
It's free because we're a nonprofit.
Okay.
Actually, wait, I take it back. We did it as a nonprofit before, and it was free, but now it isn't.
So I just
Because
wanted-
North Yuba Water District is a business,
They will require that we have an insurance policy,
which we
which
did.
is.
Well, I'm sure all that we got. I'm just curious, what's it gonna cost for a night at Alcove? And I don't expect it to be $40 million.
Yeah, with the
I'm just
donuts
curious.
and the coffee and the rental of the
You don't
hall,
even do that for us.
we're probably in the $110, $120 zone.
It's $80 just to rent the
Plus-
hall.
Plus, we've got, I know, then there's donuts and coffee or whatever.
Okay.
And then there's also the advertising to promote it, which could be in the newspaper, or it could be postcards to the folks. But we'd have to get the list of people, which is not available. The customer list is not available.
So we would
Can I ask
also.
a question? My question is, you have a meteorologist, a hydrologist, you're contemplating having expertise, right?
Yes.
That's going to provide information to us for projecting the coming irrigation season. If that was put on the on our webpage, if that was sent out as flyers, would that accomplish your mission? Because really would just be regurgitating that information at the Alcove, just
Yeah.
repeating what is already in writing, and maybe it might be easier just to make some things a bill stuffer and some things, bill stuffers and webpage, things like public outreach that way might.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's necessary.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, and I thought a lot about it. And we've had, 3 meetings, and I would say that there was sort of mixed success with respect to the information transfer, either direction.
Probably about in the same ballpark cost-wise, although again, we're
Right.
talking pennies.
So if we pull D, and we just think about A, B, and C, which is providing information, weather information, the best information we could find about the irrigation outlook.
Which kind of, D would probably definitely coincide with B on your periodic communication to the customer base.
Right.
And I'm assuming that would be, what kind of time frame are you thinking, like, how periodic would it be with it?
At least once a month, I think. If you
So
think
that
about
probably
yourself,
cover 'em for the early spring and give them the update. Go buy seeds or don't buy seeds.
March, April, May would cover it.
The only thing I would be hesitant about would be the idea that somehow we're on the hook for their seed and undertaking. Our policy says that we can't guarantee water in any specific quantity or quality, and no obligation is created.
Right.
So when a person does an undertaking or a business undertaking, usually they have some kind of redundancy in their plan, that if our water fails or runs out, they have a well that can pick
Right.
up the slack. But I wouldn't want to be in any kind of position where I'm making a projection and guaranteeing that they'll have success in their undertaking.
Needs to be a disclaimer of some sort.
Well, we're gonna give them timely, accurate information that we receive, and what I'm getting from this is like throughout the season too, to let you know.
It'd be ideal to know when it's gonna get cut off.
Yeah, because if you're suggesting every month, that would kind of walk them through the season, and
Right.
we'd try to give them advanced notice. This month would be, acknowledged to them we'd try to be a month ahead of the curve, I guess is what
Right.
I'm trying to say.
So shall I pursue this idea? The number one idea. Do I have board support for the number one idea?
Yes.
So, number one, can we break it down? A, B, C, D?
Yeah, let's just do A, B, C on number one. We'll take the D away. E is the customer meeting. We're gonna use the website and,
Okay,
and,
so A is basically,
newsletters.
it's basically B or C.
And C is gonna be a no cost, right, at this point?
Well,
I don't know the answer to that.
that's where I was saying that this maps are gonna play into that to find a true expert in our area. Because we're pretty unique, it's a small area we're talking about.
Very small.
Ben's rain gauge.
Yeah, and that's
And
great.
boards off.
So I'm thinking, you know, I don't know, I have to talk to the fellow and see if he has anybody else that he recommends.
Well, if he has rainfall and snow and things like that, and for 25 years, he's gonna have a trend line to kind of show when the droughts hit, how long they
Right.
last. Because I did this back in the day where I had at least 20 years of information, and the trend line seemed pretty repeatable.
And that's the expectation, I think, is that it's gonna be like it was in 87 or 92 or,
Yeah.
you know, 2012 or whatever, that it all looks like 2012 right now. And so that will enable us to make some kind of a pitch about what's gonna happen, you know. Hide your seeds or go buy more. Okay, so I got my mandate that I wanted there. Number 2, here's the basis of this question. We're gonna finish piping the Forbes down to, and we have 18 meetings to go before that happens, board of directors meetings. And so I think we need to begin to think about how we're gonna handle selling all that new water. And we also need to imagine what it's gonna be like for the, you know, for signing up new customers for irrigation season in Dobbins and Oregon House. So I'm imagining that maybe it's a little early to get started on the idea, but it's probably not way too early. Maybe in 6 months we start thinking about this. And what we have to deal with, of course, we already know how complicated it can be. There's all these easements. There's a lot of issues that come to the fore. There's all the private pipelines. There's all kinds of things going on that we have to deal with to sell more water, but that's the objective. We pipe this ditch so we can make more money and sell more water and have happier customers. And so that's our major effort. And I don't know, what do you think? Can we have just a moment discussion about this issue, this idea? Doug, do you have an opinion about it?
Repeat the question, so I'm.
Do you think we need to start planning what we're gonna do when we have twice as much water as we have now?
Well, definitely, but there's also, again, the 2005 agreement, extra capacity in that ditch went to South Feather. That was written into the 2005. If they don't, you know, we don't have an issue with that. We size the pipe so that we can essentially, by removing the losses, ensure that we can deliver, well, ensure as best we can, deliver domestic, because they're the ones that the state are going to be upset about if we don't give. The South Feather have their full amount, because contractually we have to do that, and then have enough left that we can give you guys all the water they need. Now, if Dry Creek isn't running and we pipe that ditch, we don't really need Dry Creek, do we?
You'd be close. I mean, you know, it's talking about getting to the end of the season, right? And if we were talking about the ditch running at 24 CFS and all things being equal, South Feather takes their 11 and our treatment plant takes its 2. There's 13 out of the 24 leaving 11. Historically, if we had a wet year like we're having this year, and the ground's saturated and it's not a sponge absorbing more losses, and the ditch is tight and, you know, is running tight, historically my understanding is 12 has always kind of been the magic number that gets it done. So you basically have almost 100% of that, you know, if the 11's true, but you're still gonna need some kind of buffer.
Well, but that's also speaking not paying money.
Right, not going into
We're
the third
block
tier.
one there, because in 2013, they went and paid money to make that thing run, and they ran up a bill of $58,000 with 12 weeks left in the season. And to finish that other 12, it was going to be an additional $125,000. And irrigation wasn't willing to pay it. And so it ended at 12 weeks. That's based on the minutes
Right.
of this.
Now, just to hit that point, paying for the irrigation water, paying to bring it down through SF-14,
Mm-hmm.
because we're past the first 2 blocks, means you have to charge the customer, because you can't give,
Well,
you can't give public money to private enterprises.
yeah. And also technically, again, the 2005 agreement said that before we can bring water down that we're paying for, we actually have to have a reserve count set up with that money in it. And that reserve count, just from a domestic person here, should not come out of the pocket of the district as a whole. That should actually be the people that want to use it, which is irrigation.
I would like to, I take exception to one of the things that Doug said, that Dry Creek wouldn't be, I forget what your comment was, something, do we even need Dry Creek? Yes, we do need Dry Creek.
Well, I didn't say we didn't, I'm just,
Okay.
hypothetically, right now, if Dry Creek goes dry, we got an issue with getting enough water out of the rest of the system for you guys without having to pay. All I'm talking about here is not having to pay. If Dry Creek is running, it's icing on the cake. And that all goes down to irrigation. And then we have the rest of it, as long as capacity allows us to do it. And the pipe was sized for 24 CFS, because that's 2005 agreement.
Could I interject one thing? The Dry Creek would be, you're right, we need it. Dry Creek would, if it's running like it's running now, it could be it's our primary source to carry us as far as it'll take us. We'll use the water from Forgetown to supplement towards the end of the season. So the more time, the longer Dry Creek runs,
Yeah.
the better off we are, and the no charge we don't hit tier 3 possibly.
And in really good years, Dry Creek will take us into June.
Yes.
And sometimes to July, and we still have our 3,700 acre feet in Little Grouse Valley that's sitting there waiting for us.
Yes, but again, it all comes down to, I'm talking strictly not having to pay for it. If you want to pay for it, that's fine, but realize we only have one data point, and that was 2013, and they actually used block, I get it mixed up, block 2. It was the water that was meant for Yuba City, and for whatever reason, they charged us against that account. And I've got the forms from South Feather, and I'm more than willing to share those. They ran up $58,000 or $56,000 just to get out to 12 weeks from the end of the season. And that's in the minutes. Again, go look it up. And then the estimate, the discussions in the minutes were to continue through to the end of the season, would have been an additional $125,000. So yes, we can pull from the thing, but you gotta realize the cost, and if you're willing to pay the cost,
I'm only talking about the 3,700 acre feet. I'm not talking about trying to take an additional, we are entitled to take 10,000 plus acre feet if we pay for it. I'm just talking about the 3,700 acre feet that we don't pay for. That's free. So.
Yeah, but 800 of that, currently 800 or so of that goes to domestic just to get 400.
No, actually I have to disagree with you, because Orlevy is what feeds the domestic treatment plant for months. It doesn't take 800 acre feet out of our 3,700, because Orlevy is what's taking care of our treatment plant for a very, very long time. You got, Orlevia's an easy one to forget about,
I
but it's a
didn't
very
forget about it.
important one.
The rule of thumb that we've used is 800 for domestic and the rest for irrigation out of the 3,700. Now it turns out the way the current setup is, we gotta give some of that to South Feather
To make
as
up
well.
for their losses, correct.
Yeah, but I'm not willing to have, well, we shouldn't be willing to have domestic rely on Orleva. Because if they run out, if there's any kind of stoppage, or it's not flowing as much as we say, then the state will come after us.
Right, well then
And
it kicks,
so-
yeah, it kicks back into our 3,700 acre feet.
And we
but-
figure 400 acre feet is about, would give us a domestic through the period of time. With the losses, rule of thumb, we just double. Yes, you can be more specific, more point, but that's where the 800 came from. And that sort of does consider Orleva in there, just like the amount of water that I'm talking about considers Dry Creek.
So it comes back to, once the system is repaired, then we don't have that level of losses, which means we have even more water available from Little Grass Valley
That's
that
right.
can go to the irrigation customers. So again, we shouldn't end up paying for anything at all.
No, we'll be real close, but if Dry Creek is running at all, we're there, I think. And that's, I don't want to be held to that if the 1 year comes and it's all down, whatever. But yeah, if we pipe the ditch, the problem sort of goes away. It's still there, but it's doable without having to pay. And then you have all that extra water on top of it. And right now, if you ran the ditch at 24 CFS, I think we worked it out 24/7, we could pipe about 17,000 acre feet down that pipe. Consider that to be the, how much we are allocated.
So there is a sense then here, according to data, that we'll have some water to sell.
As long as South
Dobbins
Feather's
House.
agreeable. It's said that you got to get the exact wording, but the exact wording has to do with something if they can meet all the obligations, 3,700. Everything over the top of that, they get first dibs on. And we could dig out the 2005. I did. I showed you that last month or the month before. They have first rights to increases in the what's the term?
I think what you might be drawn to, and I've got to go back and read the 2005 agreement, it talks about excess capacity.
Yeah.
So I believe it's saying whatever we're not using. So if we're using our full entitlement, if we're using everything that belongs to us.
With theirs.
Yeah. There's no excess capacity. And so I don't know they get, it only, the way I recall it is if we're not running it at our full CFS entitlement, then that excess capacity would be available to them. But I don't
My
know.
only concern is that given water, I think that'll be settled in court. But in any case, we'll have enough to satisfy, without excess capacity, to satisfy everything as it's currently standing, and we can deal with the other as it comes
Well,
up.
and I think what Gary's getting at, and I was gonna mention this later, but I'm kind of curious why the irrigation policy wasn't actually on the agenda this time, because I know that it was talked about way back in October, but we need to schedule the irrigation policy for revision anyway to be put on the agenda. So maybe that's the context in which we could talk about this piece, Gary, is let's get the irrigation policy on the agenda for revision anyway, and then this can be folded into larger discussions around the irrigation policy itself.
It's in the works.
Yeah, we're starting with, let's see here, BVID.
You know,
We're starting here, but there's gotta be something to present to the board, so that the board can see it and start to talk about it.
The irrigation policy?
Yeah, there has to be some fundamental, basic thing there to talk about, so that we're not all visualizing what the policy looks like.
We're also running currently, and this isn't to say we don't need a new policy, but we're running under an existing policy put in place in 2014, I think.
That's what I thought everybody was referring to, was
That was-
revising that policy.
Yeah, and that was written by Jenny and Donnie Ferguson.
And so that was my understanding, is we were taking that policy,
We
we
are.
were gonna revise that.
Yes.
So
That's
we
my
already
understanding as
have-
well.
Okay, so we already have a policy, it's just a matter of bringing it to the table so that we can start
Well,
talking about revisions?
making changes, if you feel that changes need to be made, and if it doesn't get there this month, personal opinion, the thing's been there for 6 years, and it was written by Jenny and Donnie.
I think
That's not true.
one way to start would be to pull the policy off our website, and all of us can start making our notes on there, what we want to discuss. That's one way of going about getting the ball rolling, so that when we do start discussing.
Well, the irrigation policy is on the website, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but
Pull
he's
it up,
saying copy
revise-
it.
You
Oh.
can see what it is now. If we're gonna revise it, you can,
And I think,
it's a guideline for going.
so you're gonna look for, why does it need improvements?
Exactly.
Okay.
Why and where, what areas are we?
What are they, right?
Yeah. But I see what Gary's going at here is that, you got a big part of that is if we pipe the ditch and we get new customers, that policy is gonna have to reflect our new.
Well, it's not, we have the
totally
customers,
different.
it's just been a moratorium. We could lift the moratorium for new customers.
Well, I think it's a good idea to address, I stand with Gary on this one, I think we need to revise the irrigation policy to include a plan, because we have 1,500 annexed customers that have been paying taxes for decades. Some of them actually died and never got their water. And so with 1,500 people, we don't really know yet, but how many people would be able to be signed up? Is it really, I doubt that all 1,500 could necessarily get it, we don't know. But I think it's something that we do have to think about, because I don't think it's gonna be an easy peasy thing to craft that language.
It's gonna be very complex
Yeah.
because of all the easements and all the pipelines and the
Yeah.
private stuff. Anyway, when you go to download it, to read it, to take a look at the existing one, you can get the one from BVID also. They have an irrigation policy on their website. And South Feather has a big rules and regulations, and this little teeny piece of it is their irrigation policy. But the BVID one is much easier to read and follow. And it's sort of structurally more adaptable, if you will, and the wording's pretty good, in my opinion. Okay, let's skip that one. I got one more. Let's forget 3A, use more maps and pictures. Everybody likes that idea. What about the idea of there being some portion of the board meeting where the folks in the public can ask questions and they're answered by the board members? I'm imagining, here's a question, and Terry says, I'll take that question. I know the answer to that question. Or Doug says, I'll take that question. Gretchen says, I'll take that question. In other words, there's a little bit of interaction between the person in the public and the board about finding out information. Now, it's also difficult to control, because you might get a filibuster in the middle of the question and answer period. So, Barbara, can I just ask you, with respect to people asking questions at board meetings, and with respect to board members answering their questions, what's the umbrella over this in the Brown Act say?
The Brown Act doesn't get into this kind of thing. There's no provision in the Brown Act that talks about Q&A in a board meeting. So if you want a Q&A portion of your meeting, you can set your meeting up to allow for that. I'd caution that you may have different answers to a particular question. You may answer it one way, and another director may answer another way.
That's a good point, yeah.
And so, that's part of the reason why we avoid Q&A in a board meeting. We, you know, if there's a comment or a question presented by the audience and the board wants staff to respond to it, they can ask for that, or they can ask for a response at the next meeting. That way, you have a consensus in the response. There's some questions that are very simple to answer, and you can allow for that.
Other board meetings that I've been to, the audience, the public is allowed to ask any questions they want, and they get an answer.
Who has to answer the question?
Whoever wants to respond will answer. Typically, what will happen is if the public has a question, and it's for the board, typically the president will answer first, but then we'll hand off to some of the other board members to chime in. If the audience has a question of, say, Leona or Heidi or Jeff, they will ask the question and they will get an answer. And in fact, even the public will even ask questions of the attorney, and the attorney will answer. And that's the way all these other board meetings are conducted if you go there.
The other problem is that, when does it end? In other words, you ask the question, you get the answer, and then it's but. In other words, the interchange keeps going,
Well, I
and
think
when's
that's
the end
time
of the
limits.
interchange?
Maybe
Well,
time
it is.
limits.
It is kind of redundant though now with the stocking stuffer that's going in the bills, where they can write down any question they want on that piece of paper, and we will compile them every month, put out these are the questions being asked, and here are the answers. We don't need to have a Q&A here when we can get from everybody and not just the people that show up.
I don't know what this flyer is that you're talking about.
It's a piece of paper that was put in all the bills that rate how we're doing, and then do you have a question? And let them write the question.
It would only be domestic right now.
Yeah, we're not getting those
Because we haven't
kinds of
started
things.
billing irrigation.
Right, but, you know.
Can I interject?
But it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, the question was, part of public outreach you guys assigned me to. One of the things, I've heard a lot of survey monkeys and a lot of various entities claiming to be the source and that sort of thing. And last board meeting, there was a call to action to find one group of people claiming to be the authority. So it seemed that to me that the answer was to create a little questionnaire that goes in every bill. And basically it says, rate us 1 to 10 kind of thing, and then it gives them the opportunity to tell us how they feel. And then it gives them the opportunity to put down their name, their address, or their email, or however they want to be contacted. The idea was that if there were people that wanted to be contacted, that whatever division they fell in, I would give them to each of you, and you could field their questions as their director. It went out in this current billing, that we haven't got it all back yet, everybody hasn't paid their bill yet. And the thought was, we're heading towards March 1st. Irrigation will start filling out application for service. Once we start making delivery on their second bill, in other words, that we're a month ahead, right? So they pay the first month, they apply for service, and we begin April 15th. What we'll do is when they receive their next bill, they will get the same questionnaire, if you will, and tell us how we're doing. Are we fulfilling our mission? What do they need to know? And then
they can
again,
write their own question.
Yes, they can write their own questions. They can tell you if they're happy or sad. There's no leading questions. It's simply a comment section. Tell us how we're doing, rate us, and then tell us how you want to be contacted.
That sounds great. I think it sounds better than the question and answer session on the meeting.
And that gives you, because the idea has always been, and the things that have always been spoken of at the board meeting is, people want to interface with you. So if they choose to and give you the opportunity to, however they want to be contacted, you now have that opportunity to have a one-on-one with your constituents.
I could see where some of the questions might involve having to go get some information, so then you're right back to, well, let me email it to you, let me mail it to you, same thing the flyer's gonna do.
Yeah.
I can see a lot of the questions that probably would come up, it's not gonna be a lot of information we might have right in front of us. Adam,
For the
that might require-
in-person thing you're talking,
What's that?
the in-person
Yeah,
question and answers.
exactly.
The meeting, during the
Right.
meeting.
Yeah.
So,
You know, look at what you have in front of you now. If somebody asked you a question, you're not gonna have, unless you know it off the top of your head, but wouldn't you wanna know for sure?
Well, it's, in my mind, it's also, you get questions from everybody potentially. Not just, I mean, it's the same faces. It's good, gotta know what they say, but there's people, especially domestic. How many domestic, well, can't ask that, sorry, I didn't say that. If you turn on a tap in domestic and water comes out, they're happy. There are exceptions, and they're actually talking to me. But, yeah, it's the
So-
ability to reach more people than,
so let's just think about it that way. Let's think about it as the implementing the question and answer in the billing cycle with the newsletters. Everybody in favor? Everybody like that idea?
yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna shut up now. What I'm gonna take back with me is, I'm gonna focus on number one, trying to get more information to the folks during the early spring, actually during the season, the whole season, and find some weather information that's reliable, and pin sample templates for information to communicate to the customer base. That could presumably also be in the bill, or on the website, or
Sure.
or during the board
Any
meeting.
way you want.
Okay, I'll shut up now. Thank you very much for the time.
Jared.
Do we have,
Anybody else have questions? Good. Nobody, everybody good? Okay. Public.
I'm trying to stand up, but I can't really. Two things, and I'm gonna address it to Director Nielsen. You did say, and you looked at Mr. Maupin when you said it, that you two